Hey guys, welcome back to week 3 of developing the right hand. My name is Evan Tauscher. I'm a classical guitarist here with jamplay.com. And for those of you that have missed it, the past 2 weeks, we've really been setting up the right hand so that we're eliminating the chance of developing bad habits. And for those of you that already play quite a bit with the right hand, we're just refining that technique and making sure everything's working properly. And while I'm giving everyone a chance to join here, I just want to mention that if you leave a comment, something that you have, a question that you have about right hand technique in general, or something regarding the guitar, I'll be happy to answer them. Just leave your question in the comments below, whether you're watching this on Facebook or Jamplay's website or wherever you might be, YouTube. Leave a question there, and I'll be trying to answer as many as possible at the end of this stream. So like I was saying, the past 2 weeks, we've really been doing some somewhat boring but important things. Like last week, we were playing a lot of just C major arpeggios, and we played a simple little etude to try to refine our right hand technique and make sure we weren't jumping too far too fast. But this week, I've got a really cool etude here that I wrote for you guys. And actually, it applies a lot of these techniques in a pretty simple way. It does require bar chords at some point, but I imagine a lot of you already play bar chords, and if you don't, you can just skip that section or simplify it and just play it on one string rather than playing the whole chord. So you have the music there with you. It's just over a page long, this piece, and it encapsulates a lot of different arpeggio techniques on the classical guitar. So feel free to play this on electric or a steel string, whatever you have around you. It'll work on whatever you play. So why don't we get started? It starts out with the most basic of arpeggios, right? We have Hey guys, welcome back to week 3 of developing the right hand. My name is Evan Tauscher. I'm a classical guitarist here with jamplay.com. And for those of you that have missed it, the past 2 weeks, we've really been setting up the right hand so that we're eliminating the chance of developing bad habits. And for those of you that already play quite a bit with the right hand, we're just refining that technique and making sure everything's working properly. And while I'm giving everyone a chance to join here, I just want to mention that if you leave a comment, something that you have, a question that you have about right hand technique in general, or something regarding the guitar, I'll be happy to answer them. Just leave your question in the comments below, whether you're watching this on Facebook or Jamplay's website or wherever you might be, YouTube. Leave a question there, and I'll be trying to answer as many as possible at the end of this stream. So like I was saying, the past 2 weeks, we've really been doing some somewhat boring but important things. Like last week, we were playing a lot of just C major arpeggios, and we played a simple little etude to try to refine our right hand technique and make sure we weren't jumping too far too fast. But this week, I've got a really cool etude here that I wrote for you guys. And actually, it applies a lot of these techniques in a pretty simple way. It does require bar chords at some point, but I imagine a lot of you already play bar chords, and if you don't, you can just skip that section or simplify it and just play it on one string rather than playing the whole chord. So you have the music there with you. It's just over a page long, this piece, and it encapsulates a lot of different arpeggio techniques on the classical guitar. So feel free to play this on electric or a steel string, whatever you have around you. It'll work on whatever you play. So why don't we get started? It starts out with the most basic of arpeggios, right? We have just a simple PIM arpeggio, which is PIM, P is thumb, I is index, M is middle. We discussed that in the first week, but just wanted to bring that back. And A finger is our ring finger. This and your thumb are the less intuitive ones, just with the English language. A doesn't really seem like it stands for ring finger, and then P doesn't really seem like it stands for thumb, but it's pulgar and annular finger. So P-I-M-A. Okay, anyways, It starts out with a PIM arpeggio, A, C, E, right, these notes. Balance. So you don't want to be weighted all towards your thumb like this. You don't want to be weighted towards your middle finger and having to feel not confident with your thumb. You really want to feel a balance between each. And just reiterating this fact, these are little checkup points. When we have these easier moments, it's a good time to check up on our hands. Okay. Make sure this is happening really relaxed in your hand. Now we string cross. Like I was mentioning, we're moving from this type of balance, from the 5th string to the 1st, from now the 5th string to the 2nd. That's your new point of balance, and you've moved your arm slightly now, right? You've come from here, and now you're moving to this position. So actually, like you're holding the fingers backwards. You want to pluck and then immediately feel like you can release back to just normal. I always go back to this, but it feels like you're just hanging out, you're relaxed, you're just sitting at your guitar. That's the type of position that you want your fingers to go back to and feeling that you want them to have. Not like you're flicking them back out, but you're just letting them relax. So if that takes a little while, just play this first chord, G sharp B, and see if you can consciously relax your fingers quickly. Acknowledge that you're done with the follow through, and you can just relax your fingers. Okay, once you have it, you can play this section, which in the notation looks really confusing, and really the tab too. It's just sliding that same shape and then back to the G sharp and B. That's the only difference. Or you could do this with your second finger on G sharp. You see, that way you can slide through everything and use your second finger on that first fret. There's another tricky way to do this if you want to give your left hand a workout, and you can do this. So you're using a new grouping of fingers for each one. This is open in 1, 2 in 1, 3 in 2, 4 in 3, 3 in 2, on the way back, 2 in 1, 1 in open. So that's a good left hand workout. That's pretty tough. All right, before I go any further, by the way, I'll just play through this piece so you know how it's supposed to sound in its entirety. It's pretty short. So as you can see, there's a lot of different techniques, and they can be a little intimidating if you play them fast, but all of this works really nicely slow too. So let's continue with this etude. I sort of forgot to play that for you in the beginning so you knew sort of what you were getting into. So we just finished this section. So this is pretty simple. Once we come back to this G sharp and B, we play this E in the bass with it again. And then we play 2 high E's up here. I use my middle and then index up here. Or you could do ring middle. That's a little bit harder, but A, M, or M, I. That's what I do. So then we have just a simple E major chord. And I roll through that with my thumb. But another way that you could do this is roll through with your thumb here, just the first 3, and then use your index, middle, and A finger, ring finger, on the top 3 strings. So that would sound like this. Now that's something we use all the time in classical guitar technique when we play chords. If we can use our thumb for 3 strings and then our index finger, middle, and ring for the top 3, we've got so much more control over what note is loud and what notes are less loud. And in the E major chord, it doesn't matter so much. But when it's a really complex chord that happens, we want to make sure that we bring out the voice that's intended to be shining through the melody or whatever that given situation is. And when you have more fingers involved in the mix, you have more control. Whereas when I do this, it's a lot harder to bring out a certain note unless I just pause on it. So you can do this, or you can play like this. Thumb, 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 index, middle, A. But you can start by doing it, we'll practice this together. You can start by doing it really slow. Let's do that again. Thumb, 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 index, middle, A. Now let's do it a little bit quicker. Thumb, 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 index, middle, A. Again. And notice it's just my thumb moving. I'm not moving my arm every time I pluck with my thumb. It's just my thumb moving. And then when these happen, my thumb just hangs out. So as you speed that up, you get a little bit more comfortable with that rolling feeling. It's pretty nice. You can get a really deep sound rather than just thumb. So anyways, choose whichever one you'd like there, and then now we're going to be moving into a different type of arpeggio. Before we were doing all ascending ones, right? They were all ending with that top note, but now we're going to start with descending arpeggios. In this measure, well, I should have this label, but 9, measure 9. In measure 9, we have these 2 notes here, A and E. Let me make sure I'm in tune here. Yeah, okay, so A and E, both open strings, then M, I. So C, A, or 1st fret, 2nd fret here. So it sounds like this. Thumb, middle, A. Sorry. Thumb, middle, index. A, M, I up here. Then all that's happening these next 2 measures is the bass notes changing. So here we have, just as we discussed, then same exact thing, except instead of A in the bass, we're playing this G, the 3rd fret of the 6th string. So then F with our 1st finger, which drops that C, but it's perfect because now we have that B, right? So that's open too. And then open E on measure 12 with that high E. And G sharp here with your 1st finger. Then explain that part. Now we have A and A octaves, just like how we have these octaves, E and E. Now we have A and A at measure 13. Now what's important here is that we alternate fingers. So we're going slow enough now to where we can play all with one finger when we play that line, this one, at measure 13. But in our right hand technique, we have to learn how to alternate fingers, because if we don't, we have a certain speed limit and our hands are going to get more fatigued. And the way I always describe it to my students or people that ask me is that it's like trying to win a race running down a hall on one foot. You know, it's going to be virtually impossible to win that. And while you can get really fast at, you know, hopping on one foot, you're going to get tired way quicker. So when we're practicing something simple like this, it's a good time to apply alternation. Okay, so right here, to break that down, we have two A's and we play thumb and index finger. So the next note, this B, should be with your middle finger. Now that's natural because right now it's sort of like an arpeggio, because you're going to a different string, not playing on the same one. But the next note is C, which is on that same string, that B string, the second string. And we don't want to repeat our middle finger. We want to switch to our index. So it goes index on A, middle on the B string, index on C. So we play I, M, I, M, I, M, I. So see, we start on this I with the two A's and we end on this I finger with the two A's. And whenever I'm saying the letter names I, M, A, I'm talking about this hand. I'll never say a letter name for this hand unless I make a mistake. Okay, so I, M, I, M, I, M, I. Okay, one more time. I, M, I, M, I, M, I. Okay, I know moving our left hand and playing these different bass notes, it's really hard to do and get all of the right hand fingering correctly, but please just practice that for a minute and try to get that alternation down. The general rule we say is you never want to repeat fingers. Of course, there's exceptions to that rule, but when you repeat fingers, it's like that previous analogy that I was using, which is like running down a hallway or running through a room and then, you know, alternating feet and then all of a sudden starting to skip on one foot. That would be silly, right? So it causes all sorts of problems when you're running, and of course it causes all sorts of problems in the music too that we'll get to soon. So I am, I am, I am, am. Sorry, I. Okay, then we have this ascending arpeggio, except this arpeggio is happening on just one string. Normally you'd hear something like that, but I decided it'd be interesting to, you know, play an arpeggio all on one string. So just to mix this up a little bit so it's not so crazily arpeggiated. Okay, so 5th fret and then 10th fret for that A. And then you can really slow down there a little bit. Or maybe even all really nice, right? Okay, now we go into a half bar. So maybe if you haven't done bar chords before, this might be a little bit difficult, this section, but there's something for everyone here. If you can't do this right now, feel free to just, or maybe just play instead of, you can just play the top note and practice alternating fingers. So there's always a way to simplify this stuff, but you know, I'm trying to make this for as many people as possible and keep this musically interesting. Okay, so we're gonna bar the 5th fret here, and then all that's changing is we're going to be shifting, we're going to be changing the note on the 1st string from this A, B, C. So 5th, 7th, 8th fret. And we're doing an A, M, I pattern here, right? With combining P and the bass. shifting up 2 frets, so we're borrowing the 7th fret, and then our 3rd finger is going to come down on the 9th fret of the B string. Nice, right? And then we're going to just be changing the top note here, this D, on the 1st string to the 10th fret. Again, only changing the 1st string, 10, 9, 8, sorry, 10, 8, 7. I never deal fret numbers, I'm always thinking notes, but D, C, B, and then we're going to play an A. We're suspending this chord. So, then shifting up 1 fret, 8, 10, 9, right? C, A, E. So we're going to do that twice. Okay, so let's play that section together really slowly. Okay, so starting at the 5th fret. Okay, one more time. Let's just practice that together. And also, if you've already got this and you're like, man, this is easy. What's going on here? What you can try next is really making the notes that aren't the melody here. So these other notes, as quiet as possible. So you want to play them. Which is really tricky. So try it at a slow speed, just like we're practicing for everyone else who's probably just learning this and figuring this out for the first time. So, miss that E. A string, slide up 1 fret. Okay, now we're going to be doing a pseudo tremolo technique, which we'll get to in the later weeks of these classes. But what we're going to be doing is just playing our P and A together here on the 1st string, and our thumb here on the A string, and playing A, M, I, right? That same pattern you're doing here, A, M, I, across strings, but now you're going to be doing it on the top string. So, the goal here is to make it sound legato, not this, but, sorry, it's, once again, E, E, E to 7th fret, to the 10th, to the 8th, and what's important here is that you shift your 4th finger down so that you can get back to this position, which is the next spot. So once again, A, M, I, A, M, I, A, M, I, A, M, I. Back to where we were before in this 5th position bar chord. So 5, 7, 8, or A, B, C. And now we're doing this dominant chord. So that's 7th fret, we're barring the 7th. Like I said, if you can't do the bar chord, just play the 1st string and the 6th. It's equally as nice. So, okay, so our 2nd finger is on that 8th fret of the G string. So, we're playing that D sharp there, and it's important that when we're in this chord, that our 2nd finger is sort of getting ready for that moment, because that's the easy finger to miss. Now notice I do a rolled chord like we talked about earlier. Thumb, index, middle, A. It buys us a little bit more time, and it helps us practice rolling our chords. When you're rolling chords, one thing to mention about that is you don't want to have one note last way longer than the other. For instance, you don't want it to sound like this, or because it distracts our attention from the music, right? The important note is this one, not or this or this. So we want to sort of like we're continuously falling towards that note. That's the way you can think of it. So in this we are at measure 34 here. It's a little bit tricky, but 7, 8, 10. So that's B, C, D, then E here. We slide our pinky up to the 12th fret. And once again, we have that AMI, except now we're across strings again, right? We're not doing on the same string. So here's a tricky little thing. You'll notice in the tab here I did E, B, G sharp, E. And it's strange because you're playing 12th fret, 12th fret, 13th. It's not something we normally do in classical guitar, but that G sharp sounded so nice on the 3rd string, I had to put it there. Feel free to play it on the 9th fret of the 2nd string. That's equally nice. And then just like that moment in, let's see, where was that? We had a moment where we slowed down a little bit. Here. Oh, and also, same with that moment, feel free to do that here, a nice ritardando. So that ends with E and E. And then now we're in the final section of this piece. And what we're going to be doing is a combination of a few patterns. You'll notice here. Right, we did this earlier, the same string, AMI. But now we're doing P, M, I, A. And that pattern is a little bit confusing sometimes. In week 2, last week, you can check out that video. We did a lot of each of these arpeggios. So if this is confusing, we did literally just that same PMIA, PMIA thing. So definitely check that out. So we have A, C, A, E, or open, 1, 2, open, P, M, I, A, and then on the way back down it's I, M, P. Okay, so totally it's, and notice that sound, so accenting here, then accenting on the E. So it's not confusing, you don't want, it doesn't make sense rhythmically, so it's A, C, A, C. And then we switch this D minor shape, right? So then we play 3, 2, 1, 2, 3. So M, I, M, right? The same right hand fingering as we were doing here, just a different chord. Same thing, back to that A. So far we have, let's try that together but slow, maybe this speed. Ready? Okay, one more time, let's do it even slower. Good, so we went into the next section, E, G sharp, B, open, 1, open, then A, M, I on that E. Okay, open E. Then we go back to that same pattern. P, M, I, M, P, M, I, M, then thumb. Okay, so the same thing again, up to those repeated notes. And like I said, any questions about this that you may have, please leave them in the comments. I don't expect you to get this right away, but a section of this I do. And you can always come back to this and practice it so that we're prepared for week 4 and review earlier materials if you're just joining in. So the last bars, the last few bars here, this is what we do. We have A minor chord again, A, C. So open 2, 1. Then we're switching to this E, G sharp, B, right? And our thumb is alternating between 2 strings, which happens so much. Okay, so. And one tricky thing that I'm doing, which we'll cover in future weeks, is after I play a note, I'm immediately preparing, after I play a note with my thumb, I'm immediately preparing it on the next bass string that I have to play so that it mutes it, so that these two aren't ringing together, which sounds muddy, right? So it's, see, I come right back to that A string, I move right to the E, and then here I mute the E immediately. Then we just play 2 A's together, A on the 3rd string, 2nd fret, and then open A. Cool. I think that's a pretty thorough explanation of this. I hope that this piece resonates with you and this way of studying technique does. You know, it's something that I really believe that technique practice is best applied when you have a musical situation to use it. So often we practice technique, and in fact, I'm very guilty of it too. It's practicing just purely technical exercises. And the problem is when we get to music, we have no idea how to apply those concepts and how to make it sound musical. So here we have a bunch of different concepts on the right hand that we're applying directly to this maybe 45-second or minute-long piece that, you know, you can use as a warm-up if this is easy for you, or you can use this as a study to help you develop that. You know, maybe when you're feeling really confident with the first 2 lines of it, you add on another line. This is the way that we should really work through things and not you know, feel pressure to play a super difficult piece or a super difficult technical exercise. So it's a blend of the two. Okay, so if you have questions, please write them in the comments now if you haven't already. Probably you've been holding your guitar, about right hand technique, about the guitar, about applying it to your specific instrument, anything you may have for me. And while you write those questions, I'm just going to play through this one more time so that those of you that joined in late are able to hear how this sounds when you play it completely all the way through. So thank you so much for watching. I'll play this for you one more time and then I'll check back in with you. Hope you guys enjoyed that and this lesson. Definitely check out previous weeks if you need to review material, and check back in for next week. We're going to get to a lot of really interesting refinements of right hand technique, specifically talking about independence in our right hand. So thanks again. My name is Evan Tauscher, once again with jamplay.com. Find me on all the social media platforms just by searching my name. Let's go ahead and get to some questions. Looking forward to seeing what you guys have here. Cool. Thank you guys so much for joining in and hopefully learning that etude with me. So let's go ahead and get to some questions. And if you have, I've got a few that were just sent to me here. But if you have any others, please put them in the comments because I will get to them the best I can. Okay, let's start with this one. Why do you move your right hand towards and away from the neck? From Big Jim. Okay, so why do I move my hand towards and away? Well, when you move it towards the neck this way, you get a warmer sound. Let me demonstrate. So, with one note. And then when you come this way, you get that sound. So it's kind of a fortunate thing we're able to do on the guitar, where you can imagine like a piano, you can't alter the tone and the color of the keys so much, where on the guitar you can do that quite a bit. You can have a very different sound from this. The same chord over here. So there's different moments to move your hand in certain directions, but one thing that it's really useful for, moving your hand forward and back, is to compensate for open strings. So these open strings all sound a certain way, and if you're a guitarist, you get used to hearing people, whenever they hit an open string, it sounds the same. So you can sort of disguise open strings by playing a little bit further this way, so that it doesn't sound so clearly an open string. So for instance, if I play the notes D, E, F, you see, that open E really sticks out. So if you do this, then it blends in. The tone isn't so different on that open E. The reason why the tone is so different with that open E when you play it normally like this is the whole length of the string is ringing, making it a brighter sound than when you have a lesser length of the string ringing. So you can bring your hand forward to compensate. Let's see some others here. Hopefully that answers your question, Jim. Angelus Axes, how do you commit all of this to memory? Memory is a tricky thing. A lot of people have different methods of memorizing. There's a lot of tricks. I've heard this trick of from a very famous guitarist, David Russell, who says you start with the last measure of the piece and you memorize that one, and then you slowly add one measure back. And so then you memorize the last two measures, then the last three. And the reason why you do it that way is you're starting the most unfamiliar land, and then you're moving to what's most familiar, because probably you can play the first measure of a piece, for this one. You probably already can. However, it always gets scarier towards the end, which causes memory slips, anxiety, all sorts of different things. So if you always are leading to more familiar land, like imagine your drive home, right? That makes it a lot easier to memorize. However, I have to say that I don't really use that technique much. I have used it before, but honestly, I don't rush memorizing. I try to understand all the notes that I'm playing and not just try to memorize shapes. That's the biggest thing. If I'm memorizing based on the shape it is, or however I move my hand across the neck, that's the most dangerous way where you can't recover. But if you know the notes and you know the harmony, then even if you forget something, you can keep on going in the middle of a performance, because you know the order of the piece, you know the harmonic movement and what's happening, and you can just sort of recover and make it through. So that's really what I'd recommend doing. But there's always those situations where you have to memorize something really fast. Well, there's not always. It's kind of rare. But it's really important to understand where all the notes are on the fingerboard and learn the notes, and also have an understanding of the harmony. And take it easy. Go slow. Okay, another question here. Tommy Harrison. I get a lot of buzzing when I try to bar on the 7th fret. How can I hit that more cleanly? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So simple answer, this has to do with left hand technique, but simple answer is most of the time when we're taught buzzing the incorrect way, we're taught that you squeeze between your thumb and your index like this, and you're kind of just told to, you'll get the muscle, it'll eventually get there. But and while that's kind of true, you do have to develop some sort of muscle for like this muscle right here in your thumb. You do have to kind of develop that, but if you shift your thinking a little bit here, instead of thinking about squeezing like this, you try to think about using the weight of your arm, the natural weight of your arm, to press the string, and even experiment not using your thumb. You can see my thumb over here is not touching. I can bar the 7th fret with no other notes like this. Even if I use my other fingers, I can take my finger off in bar, because I'm really feeling like I always describe hanging from like a pull-up bar or a monkey bar or something. You can feel that you're resting the weight of your arm and shoulder going all the way up to here on the neck of the guitar. It's really helpful. I would start there. There's a lot of different exercises. Here's a cool one if you want to go back and watch this. You start like this, and you bar while just repeating these notes. Anyways, for another time. Okay, let's see. Sandra, my fingers get very tender doing bar chords after a while. Do you have any recommendations to help them hurt less? You know, that's sort of like the same question, Sandra, that I was just answering. Sorry, I didn't see your question until after there. Do you have any recommendations to help them hurt less? I would say just practice keeping your thumb off of the fingerboard. Try, I guess you're probably talking about this feeling tender. You know what, I would say don't try to do too much too soon. Don't jump straight to full bar chords. Do a 3-finger bar on just the treble strings, which are easier to press, at least on a nylon string. And then later, start adding in more strings. You know, you can try like the etude here. Once you feel comfortable doing that, do it somewhere else, maybe or here. In different keys. You make a little exercise out of it. Do it on the 2nd fret. You can make it. It's actually pretty nice, right? Yeah, something like this. You make a little exercise for yourself and don't put on too much pressure. That's funny. Don't put too much pressure on yourself or your fingers. Okay, Nathan Tyson. You hold your guitar much more vertical than I do. Would you recommend adopting your posture? Stick with what is comfortable? Okay, good question, Nathan. So if you're saying the guitar is more vertical than what you do, maybe you do something like this. Or maybe you're talking about your, right? That's a common position too. First, I'll start with why I don't play on my right leg. And the reason is, one, you have no view of your fretboard. You have to lean over. You know, if I'm looking at the camera, I can cheat, or if you're looking in a mirror, I can see. But this ends up in this posture. And then this is such a bent spine, and it causes all sorts of problems. The other reason is when I'm hanging out like this, my weight of my right hand isn't naturally on the string. So it's kind of always wanting to go out this way when my body is already twisted like this. So the weight to be applying on my guitar, I have to really go like this with my shoulder and keep myself keep myself feeling like the weight is going onto the strings. And then, the main reason for, in a body mapping and just posture, a healthy posture type of way, when you're playing like this, you're influenced to twist your body. So if you play for hours every day, you're constantly twisting your body, right? And, this is hard to demonstrate on the camera, but in another situation, everyone thinks of classical guitarists as doing this like so uniquely on your left leg. Although there are electric guitarists like Rick Graham, for instance, who plays all the time on his left leg with electric guitar. Think about this. When you stand up with your guitar, imagine you play electric guitar or acoustic. Where does your guitar sit and what angle is it at? I guarantee you it's not way over here, right? No one plays electric guitar and faces that way. Of course, some person probably does, but it's likely sitting close to the position that I have it when you're standing up. If not, maybe the neck's a little bit more flat. Okay, and I would say it's also dependent on your height. Look at your eye level and try to match where one of your tuners is. I'd say the first or second tuner. That's why I pick this angle, and every body is different. Okay, well, I think that's all the questions we have for right now. Thank you guys so much for joining in, and we're going to keep on getting more advanced. So we'll try to always take it slow for those that this is really new and fresh information for, and for those that are just looking to refine. Then we are, we'll see. Let's see if there's one more question here. I think we've got one more. Those that are looking for refining their technique, I'm always trying to mention things that you can do while we're doing certain things slow. So check back. Let's see. How long did it take you to develop the harmony you have shown up to the moment in the video? Oh, good question. Okay, the piece that I wrote, how long did it take to write that? Let's see. I spent a couple hours writing that. I'd say 2 or 3 hours. And I was just having fun, honestly, wherever my ear led me. But you know what was more tricky than just developing the piece was just making sure I incorporated all the techniques in ways that are feasible for everyone. And, you know, I don't want the piece to sound like this. And extremely simple. I wanted it to be something that, you know, every level can work on. And if you're wanting to challenge yourself, you can play the full thing. And if not, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, you can just play no bar chords and just, instead of, you can do. Okay. Good question. Let's see. Jeffrey Toro Bylander. How do you modulate notes where other musicians already know in improvisational moments? Which note is the one that continues without making... Oh, okay. How do you modulate notes where other musicians already know in improvisation? Which note is the one that continues without making a mistake? Jeffrey, sorry, it's hard to understand whether you mean if you're in an ensemble situation. If you're talking about where you're playing with other musicians and you make a mistake and the other musicians already are like, oh, what's he doing? He's getting off here. You know, in a professional setting, if you're making a mistake, all the other musicians know, because in a professional setting, everyone knows their part and everyone knows everyone else's part. So sometimes there's been situations where when I was playing electric guitar, at least, where, you know, you maybe repeated one section a little bit, like too many times. And then, you know, if you're the guitarist, a lot of times the bass and the drums and the bass, well, mostly like the bass and the keyboard will often have to like back you up. And in a classical situation, you just keep on going. I think, you know, if you miss a measure, you just try to skip to the next one. And that's why you rehearse, you know, that's why you rehearse a lot, because oftentimes the problem isn't isolated. It's not the one time you made that mistake. You probably made it in other rehearsals, and if you did, you guys had a way to recover from it. But you know what? The most important thing is if you make a mistake, don't be all embarrassed and scared about it. Own it and smile and just keep on moving. The audience will just feel more comfortable that way. The worst thing is to make an audience feel uncomfortable and nervous. And I've even heard people say before on stage, like, oh, I'll find the note someday. And then everyone laughs and then you just keep going. It's not really so serious. Okay, Edsel Oliveira. How do you go about choosing the right repertoire for your level? Good question. I think it starts with having a good teacher and making sure that you're not overstepping your bounds. But if you're learning by yourself and from jam play or from including books and supplemental materials, I would say if there's a moment in the piece where you can't solve the problem or play it fast enough, that's maybe like a measure long or 2 measures, and you can't figure that out within 15 minutes of working on it, how to make that work, then it's probably above your level. Because you should try not to work on pieces that will take you, years to just play once through. You know, yes, of course, we continually work on pieces, but it's better to have a piece that you can imagine, oh, you know what, in a couple of months, I should be able to play this and perform this for people, and it'll always get better when it's that situation. But, you know, when you pick a piece that is way too hard for you, you develop a lot of bad habits. And I'm speaking from experience because my first pieces on classical guitar were Asturias and Capriccio Árabe, and those were way above my level. I developed all sorts of bad habits, and I had to start again from the beginning. So use some sort of method. You know, if it's my course with classical guitar, start from the beginning and try to understand every concept before you jump to the end and start learning difficult etudes. Let's see. Okay, well, that's pretty good, guys. And you know what? I think that was a lot of great questions. And If you have any more, feel free to reach out to me and tune into next week's class. It's at the same time, and I'll be there to answer questions about next week's little etudes and exercises. We're going to be building independence, I believe, next week. Independence in the right hand, and just talking a lot about that because, it's hard to get these guys developed, especially if you're using your left hand a lot. And you're very developed here and just picking with the right, we have to develop a lot of independence. So thanks so much. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next week.